Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about one of the most hype ascendancies that I've personally been looking at quite a bit, which is the Gemling Legionnaire. Now, currently there's a little bit of a weird situation in the whole PoE and PoE2 community because we've gotten some little bits of information and you might be tricked into thinking you know what's going on. But in reality, we don't really know how strong certain things are simply because we don't know what's expected of an Ascendancy node. How strong is it ought to be? How good is a passive tree node? What can you easily get from gear, or what's more efficient to get on gear? What's more efficient to get from the passive tree? What do you need from an Ascendancy? How much defenses do you need? All these small bits of information will actually give us a better understanding of what's strong and what isn't. But what has me hyped about this Ascendancy is more what it taps into, and that is new design space. If you've been playing Path of Exile 1 for a while, you expect certain things. You know what's gonna happen, and stuff are gonna get reshuffled. Numbers are going to change, maybe new bosses are going to get introduced, but something completely out of your wheelhouse other than maybe sometimes a unique, like for example Nemesis, but stuff that fundamentally changes how you make a build is quite rare. And this Ascendancy taps into a design space that we haven't really seen much of, which is gems. And why this excites me is not just because of the Ascendancy itself, is because this is the prime example of what I think they're going for with a lot of the classes. And we have seen this from a few more Ascendancies. I'm going to link this down in the description if you haven't seen the overview already. Now, obviously, we have the Chronomancer, which a lot of people are hyped for. We're maybe going to talk about that a little bit later. But in terms of the Gemling Legionnaire, it all revolves around gems. And as you might know, the gem system has changed quite a bit. Long gone are the days of having to socket stuff into your items, and whenever you change an item, you now have to resocket, recolor, right? It was an absolute pain, especially while leveling. Now, this is how the system will look like in Path of Exile 2, and one thing you'll see is that there is no socket colors. Links are actually tied to the skill and not to your gear, so you can easily interchange them. Think about how comfy it is to have a tabby while leveling. Just not even because of the 6-link, mostly just because you can experiment around if you don't know exactly what you want to do. Yeah, that feeling is now all of the game. So yeah, Gemling Legionnaire plays with that premise. And with that comes a lot of new interesting ideas. For example, you have integrated efficiency, grants 3 additional skill slots. This is really hard to grasp just how good it is. We're going to talk about some examples right now, but the other node we have released right now is Thaumaturgical Infusion, which gives you max res per amount of a certain color of support gem socketed anywhere. And I think it's kind of easy to know where this goes, right? You stack a lot of different skills. You have up to 5 support gem on each of those skills because you can 6-link every single skill that you have, and then you get a big payoff here at the end in terms of max res. And do not forget, defense payoffs might actually be way more wanted than damage payoffs this time around, because if you fail a node, if you die within a tile, then you cannot redo it, even on softcore. You will have to path around it, which with how the Atlas might work, we can only speculate. There's probably going to be a lot of setup, and then you reap the rewards from certain layouts or whatever. So if you brick the wrong layout, that might be a big deal. So defenses are going to play a lot bigger role, especially, I mean, obviously on hardcore, but way more on softcore. There will actually be currency incentive to get tanky this time around, which for some people is a lot stronger incentive than just it feels comfy, right? So aside from that, we have plus 12 to quality of all skill gems, which is a complete dud. We do not know how strong that actually is. Also, if you look at it, it's the 2nd node. So for all we know, this node here might suck and you have to path through it, and at that point, it's not even worth it. But we don't really know what this does to begin with. We've had Ashes of the Stars and Dialas before in Path of Exile 1 to kind of test the waters of this, but before we actually know what the skills do with quality, it's completely irrelevant to like theorize about it. But what we can theorize about is the fact that we're not going to just be pressing one button anymore. So this is not just as strong. For example, in PoE1, Ashes, sure, it will do some stuff on your guard skills, on your, back in the day, the alt quality auras and whatnot. But mainly, if your main skill is not good and has a good quality to scale, you're probably not going to go Ashes, Dialas, or very rarely. With this, it might be different because especially with this, you're going to have over 10 skills. Now, another thing is that there will be a lot of skills that you can get from items. For example, wands, as you can see right here, have their own implicits that you can then support. Same with staves and stuff like that. So we'll have to see how easy it is to stack up these skills, because every skill, at least in theory, should mean that you are able to 6-link it, at least from what they said so far, which is another 5 support gems to kind of synergize with the rest of Gemling Legionnaire. And the last node right here is attribute requirements of gems can be satisfied by your highest attribute. That is a very strong effect potentially. One thing I want to note is that the keystone that we've seen, this one right here, actually doesn't work with it, because as you can read, it says weapons and this one says gems. So just something to point out. Now, how good this is actually going to be is going to completely depend on your pathing and what you are actually going to support with, and also how strong the node at the end is. The reason I don't really know how strong that node is because we have a lot more agency with what attributes we actually want to get, but we also have a lower amount. So maybe if you have a ton of support gems and they are going to be green, red, and blue, maybe it's actually harder to do as in PoE1, so yeah, we'll have to see. But okay, let's talk about some of the implications of the nodes we know right here. Grants 3 additional skill slots. What a lot of people will tell you is, well, I'm not going to press even more skills. We probably already have enough on our plate, so why would I even want that? But I think once people do a little bit more research into, for example, spirit gems, they will realize that GGG doesn't really plan for you to press 10 buttons. They actually want you to have a good setup in endgame with different buffs and also trigger gems. So if we talk about meta gems, as they call it, there is a ton of them that, for example, barrier invocation, when hit, gain 1 energy for each 5 energy shield loss, blah, blah, blah. There's stuff on minion def. There is, I don't know, magma barrier. There's certain triggers. All of them kind of need spirit, which, yeah, we're going to have to see how much you can actually muster up. But those 3 extra skill slots might actually give you a ton of automation. Skills that you would have otherwise not even been able to use. Think about other ARPGs where skill slots are actually holy, where if you have something on your bar, it does a certain thing. You can kind of see it as that. And obviously, these 3 skill slots also feed up to 15 extra supports into Thaumaturgical Infusion. One thing I want to point out, though, to dim the hype a little bit, you can only use a support gem once, which means that the more and more skills you add, the lower and lower the quality of your support gems will actually get. And the more and more your decision matters where you actually put your good support gems in, and how do you use all your skills the most efficiently. So I have a feeling that this is going to be something for people who like to tinker a lot, who are in PoB a lot, which gets me excited. Now, the other thing is, of course, we don't know what some of these nodes do. None of these seems particularly strong for early game. Let's just call it like that. And on release, when you don't know what the hell is going on, then you probably need a little bit of a power boost. I want to remind people, and this is, I guess, something I'm going to put in here. A lot of people are talking about, for example, crossbows on a Chronomancer. Now, if you think about, let's give you a different example. Poison witches, right? For example, occultist, having to path to the right side to get all their poison nodes. It's an absolute drag. And if I had to guess, PoE2 leveling is going to be a lot rougher than PoE1 leveling. On top of that, you have no experience while you might have a lot of experience in PoE1. So what I'm trying to say is that early game power, especially early power boosts and absolute crazy power spike nodes and ascendancies will matter a ton. And so far, this is the exact opposite of that, right? Like, you don't even have 6 links on the skill that you do use, and you don't even have the skills that you want to use. So this is completely not viable. Also, you might not even be capped until like level 50, level 60, depending on how easy it is going to be with all the runes and stuff. So the maximum res might not matter. Maybe the adaptive capability is going to matter, but probably also not. If you think about it, most of your attributes are going to come from adding extra support gems, and you're not even going to have those. However, 2 things. The first one, we don't know what these nodes do, and usually Ascendancies are not completely endgame. They have some kind of niche. So if there's going to be at least 2 nodes that you could take, that is going to get you over water until like level 60, level 70, and that's going to be a big deal. But even more so, the Mercenary has a second Ascendancy called the Witchhunter. Now, nothing in the reveal would make me think personally that you cannot respec Ascendancies. I think it would be a big deal, and they would point it out. For example, they pointed out that if you fail a map, you cannot redo the map again. So this would be a huge change. Like, not being able to change your Ascendancy would have definitely been something they would have mentioned. So you could go Witchhunter first, and then go into Gemling Legionnaire later if you want to. And so far, the Witchhunter has some pretty nice 2-pointers. If you see 4 here, which is a 2-pointer, and 2 is Decimating Strike. So this one means, apparently, that you can do up to 30% of an enemy's HP damage. It's like a reverse call on your first hit, which we don't really know if it ramps up. He said something about getting lucky, so maybe it's 0 to 30% on the first hit in terms of getting chunked. Pay attention to this clip real quickly and the enemy HP bar up top so you can see it for yourself. So he boinks it and it does like 30-ish% damage. Maybe it's a little bit less. Especially since we don't know bosses at the start, it might be very good to have some huge damage chunks like this. Obviously, Culling Strike is better because usually bosses get harder and harder. They enrage, they have new attacks the lower they go. So maybe this is not as strong as I think it is, but it's definitely decent. As well as Zealous Inquisition gives us Exploding, which is 10% chance to deal 100% of their max damage. Obviously, this is not like Chieftain because Chieftain you can kind of spread. This is more just like a chunk. The AoE looked pretty decent in the trailer though, and the chance is doubled against Undead and Demons, which seems like a lot of endgame systems have. And in a game that doesn't always have bosses in every map, this also seems like a big deal. Just like Decimating Strike in its own right, this one means if you have a pack and there's a rare in the middle, there's a good chance it's just gonna explode. Palsteron from the future here. Witchhunter looks actually even better than I thought. They just revealed some stuff. So Concentration, which we already knew about, which is kind of this thing that breaks enemies' concentration, and the way they interact has a pretty strong payoff node right here. Deal up to 30% more damage to enemies based on their missing concentration. So that might be a really good one. And then we also have Culling Strike, which is the first node. We don't know what the one after that one is going to be. Maybe it's going to make Culling Strike even bigger. We know that Cull is obviously from PoE1. If you strike an enemy that's 10% or lower, it will automatically die, which, yeah, against bosses is pretty damn crazy. And from what I've gleaned in terms of power level per Ascendancy, this is going to be very hard to get elsewhere. Otherwise, it wouldn't really be an Ascendancy. Now, as of this recording, I don't know exactly what Culling Strike will do. Some people have said that it's the same, but some other people said that it is implied that it will be at 30% against white mobs and then trickle down to unique mobs where it's only going to be 5%. If that's true, it would kind of not really jive with the Witchhunter identity, but we'll have to see. And that's only the beginning. So what I'm trying to say is, even if Gemling Legionnaire doesn't get any help early game, you're probably going to be able to play Witchhunter and then in end game maybe do something with it. But man, the implications of such an intricate and interesting Ascendancy just gives me so much hope for the game. I was really hoping that it wouldn't just be a PoE1 reskin with better gameplay, and they have completely exceeded my expectations with some of these. It means that they're willing to take risks. I cannot wait to see the full Ascendancies and everything they've come up with. Once that happens, obviously there's going to be another video. But for now, I just wanted to kind of shout out the Gemling Legionnaire. I cannot wait to work on stuff like this. I really hope PoE2 will come out before release, just so we can kind of see what's going on in the tree and whatnot. But yeah, did I forget about something? Post it down in the comments, I guess. But yeah, that's about all I got. And since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.